Well, Chris, I'm really excited about our topic today. We're going to be talking about how you can use Eastern medicine in combination with Western medicine, specifically to labs. So, how Eastern medicine would communicate or talk about labs. And, Chris, I'm really excited to have you here today. You're one of my best friends in this community of health, and what you're doing with using labs, but then taking it back 5,000 years, comparing it with Eastern medicine is so unique that I had to have you today. So thanks for being here.
I really appreciate it. And we were talking about before about you having a podcast and starting with all the information you have. I'm really honored when you sent me the message, and I really am thankful because definitely in the culture today, you see that shift about the good information that is being put out that actually gives people an awareness, like with Eastern and Western medicine, that they can be combined. And I really mean this with all my heart. Like, you're going to have other guests on your podcast that have done that. And so it's like the word's getting out. And to me, it makes your heart feel good because as long as I've been in the game and you have too, it's like people are getting more aware and they're actually feeling more comfortable with Eastern medicine. Like, it's not, quote, woo-woo, and it's not something that would be so esoteric you can't rely on it. So in the office, yes, I do love to use labs, and I like to try to compare it to what ailment and what symptom they have in Chinese medicine. So some of the things that I have really paid attention to is we like red blood cell counts. In Chinese medicine, for example, is the hair on the top of the head. You can have hair loss or lose hair. So we have patients that come into us and they'll say, Doc, I keep taking a shower and half my hair is falling out in the drain. And they'll say, whenever I brush my hair, there's a glob of hair, and I used to have thick hair and it's thinned out. And naturally, I think it's legit. I love doing a thyroid panel, and we find out if they have thyroid panels, and we see what their thyroid levels are at. The other thing is the hair on top of the head in the Eastern medicine world is controlled by the bladder. And so the bladder meridian starts right in the inner canthus, like right here in the middle of the eye, and it goes right down the back, over the head, down the back of the spine, all the way down through your calves. Now, what you'll find, which is really funny, is that most of the patients that tell you that, if you look at the heels on their feet, they'll have cracks or fissures, and they'll have bumps, and this makes sense. But when you look at the hair on the head being loosened, the kidneys and the bladder are connected physiologically. And in the Chinese medicine world, they're called paired organs, and they're paired meridians. They're connected because the kidneys drain the liquid into the bladder to be excreted. But one thing that I thought was really interesting was that I was wondering why this would happen. I was like, why would the bladder and the weakness of the bladder cause loosening hair? But when I looked at their blood reports, I would find huge hemoglobin discrepancies. So I would find their hematocrit would be off skew. It'd actually be pretty low. And at some times, I would find that their ACT and even their mean cell volume would almost be, in a sense, swollen. So I was like, every one of them, I found this discrepancy. Now, as I investigated more, I found out that the kidneys produce certain hormones, and one was called erythropoietin. So the kidneys have a hormone that signals to the bone marrow to produce more red blood cell. So when a patient had a kidney infection, it would transmit to a UTI to the bladder, and it would disrupt the hormones going into the actual bone marrow, causing a shift and change in their red blood cell production. Now that's pretty crazy because your red blood cells can be changed. So I was like, oh, bladder issues, UTI, red blood cell issues. And it's explained how the natural Western medicine aspect of hormones in the kidneys in changing the red blood cell production in the bone marrow could lead to hair loss, because when we change the bone marrow, the actual feeling of the bone, Chinese medicine world, they say it transmits through the spine and up to the skull. So the bone actually gets weakened and the hair follicles get loose. So they start losing their hair. That was just one extrapolated like reason when I started looking into going, you know what, there is a legitimacy between Chinese medicine and using a blood cell or a blood panel. So when I started to dive into that, man, I was like, oh, and I'd ask that patient, do you have UTIs? Do you have bladder infections? 100% of them would say, yes, I do. They have cracked heels. They usually have plantar fasciitis. and he also had calf pain. Every single one of them. And that's generally bladder in Chinese medicine. And every single one of them would have some kind of red blood cell issue on their blood panel.
So let's grab a couple of those facts and just like make them easy to listen. So right now, if you have a CBC, which is your blood counts, which has your red and white blood cells on it, what do they want to look at? You said hematocrit?
Hematocrit.
And what numbers are they looking for in there to figure out if maybe this might be talking to them?
If their hematocrit's slightly lower, and if their mean cell volume numbers are a little bit above out of range, those are the two I would actually look into. Another thing I would actually ask them to do is look at your normal range. And if the hematocrit is a little bit lower and you have lower lymphocytes, lower below range, check that out.
Lymphocytes are white blood cells.
White blood cells. If you have that, those are three things to check into. And if you have that combination with the hair loosening, then I would say you have a kidney infection. And you don't even know it, because when you go to the doctor, they're going to say you don't have a kidney infection. They're going to say you have basically clear urine, no E. coli. And you know as well as I do, if I find that, I'll go get them an extra blood panel, or not a blood panel, a panel like from Microbiology DX or something like that, like a lab that does really heavy bacterial checks. And I cannot tell you how many patients have had at least 3 to 4 types of strep in their urine because they weren't checked for. They were only checked for E. coli. So when you check the MCV and the hematocrits plus the white blood cells, just take a look, because sometimes you go, oh, it's lightly out of range. That is the key. I don't care if it's completely out of range, just slightly. So I love, like, when I mix them, when they bring those into me, I'll look at it and I'll go, did you have a bladder infection? And they'll say, no. I'm like, we're going to get it checked. So, yeah.
So when it comes to different types of lab testing, it matters a lot what lab you're using, and it matters what they're testing for. Because I know within what I talk about all the time, whether it be Lyme disease or mold toxicity or even parasites, the average type of testing, the standard test out there from your big box laboratories aren't specialized to finding these more intricate pathologies. So when it comes to a UTI, we're looking for white blood cells in the urine, we're looking for proteins, nitrates, oxalates, but you're saying they're not looking for a wide array of bacteria. They're looking specifically for, a lot of times, more E. coli.
Very few. Like, if they even have E. coli, and the strains of E. coli they are looking for are probably 1 to 2 strands, because the test, in essence, only is going to try to detect the protein code or the toxicity produced by a couple of different types of bacteria. One instance, I had a patient that we were doing a virtual, and she had those readings on her blood report, and she was saying that she just had a little bit of pelvic discomfort, but she kept telling me her calves were hurting. And I was like, well, I think you have a bladder infection. Everything you said to me, you have that. And so she went and got 3 different doctors to do a urinalysis, and they said, no, there's no E. coli. Now, we do different types of testing. We do some biofeedback, and I was like, I don't think you have that. I think you either have a salmonella or you have some form of strep. That's what I'm thinking. So she found a lab. She found it for me. I didn't find it. I was like, she goes, hey, I found this Microgen DX, with GENDX, down out of Texas. And she said, I found this place. She gets her cultures done, and they're touting, one of their head medical doctors said, we test for over 50,000 different types of bacteria. And I was like,
the normal lab does 3 or 4 bacteria,
and
this lab does 50,000, which probably doesn't cover them all.
Nope.
But 50,000 versus 3. So when you have urinary tract infections or symptoms that could relate, which would be like burning, pain in your urinary tract, burning pain up into your, usually in the lower back, but up in the abdomen. You feel that up into the kidneys. This can honestly, what other symptoms can go with UTI so people know, like, maybe this is what I've been dealing with?
Totally. So I would, just like you said, burning or pain down in the pelvic area, low flank pain around the back of the ribs, calf pain, because that's where the bladder meridian's at, heel pain, plantar fasciitis, chapped, basically cracked heels. You can also have any type of dandruff right down the middle of the hair, loosening hair, chronic spine pain, like literally like it just aches because it's the bone. So those are the ones I would look for.
Now, one thing I do want to bring up is commonly when people are in nursing homes, so elderly people,
Yep.
it's well known that when they get a UTI, they have a lot of neurological symptoms, a lot of brain symptoms, whether that be increased irritability, anxiety, memory loss, brain fog. So is it possible that you add mental health symptoms to unknown urinary tract infections?
That is
or known ones, but
definitely. You're hitting it right on the head because like we've had patients, both you and I like even little kids, and I can go down story lane, but one of the biggest is they'll go manic or lightly manic, if I can use that term, but they'll actually have an attitude where it's like they're calm and all of a sudden they're very angry and upset and they rage. My mom had that when she was in assisted living. I've had patients that come in just 3 days ago. This little girl come in and she said she had slight signals. Did my testing. I said, I think she has a bladder infection. Did laser. We both use cold laser. Goes back and her mom goes, she called him 2 days later. She says, hey, after the second day, she has a raging UTI. She never had, she just got checked by the doctor last week and no UTI. But she says she has such rages that she'll actually throw stuff through the wall, put her fist to the wall, and she's only like 11.
jeez.
And when you have those signs and symptoms together and you think that there's literally 8 different types of regular strep, like literally mutans, and you have Lusitania, all these different types of strep, and you're only going to test for 1 or 2 or 3. When this girl sent off, the one at the original lady that had just no E. coli, she's like, you're fine. She had 4 different types of strep. And I was like, what? And so she sent it to me, and they were so high that her doctor was like, these are like off the charts. What did you have? Went back, went through her medical history. She literally had strep. Like she said, oh, I had it like 6 times in 1 year when I was a kid. And I'm like, you had strep 6 times in 1 kid. And she goes, I just kept getting antibiotics. And she goes, but I kept getting UTIs and I kept doing, but she didn't tell me that at the very beginning, even on her health history. And when we found the lab, I started sending everybody to that lab. And I know this could be, I don't want it to be boring for the audience, but I'm just saying that whenever I found that, I would find these small signals. And I don't care if you had 2 or 3 forms of strep that are really high, it's enough to make you hurt. And their blood report would show it. And I would say, that's when my head started getting correlating. I was like, oh, the doctors are not correlating it with their urinalysis test. So I started finding their blood analysis. They send me your blood reports. And they started showing the MCV, the hematocrit, and I was like, I mean, to me, man, I'm not acting like, oh, I know this and I'm smart. It is not that at all. I'm like, are you telling me that these many people have UTIs and they go manic? Because you and I work with people with Lyme disease and parasites and such. And what you'll find, though, too, is anytime those individuals have blood reports that show that, you and I know this, we do a lot of Chinese medicine, you'll ask them, did you ever have a chronic fear in life, or did you have a point in your life where you felt stuck and you couldn't move forward? And I'm going to guarantee you, almost 100% of those people are going to be, yep, I didn't move forward. And they got stuck. And that's when I think the beauty of like our emotional work. And, you know, we know people are like, you and I were talking about being empathic. We're just like, we work with a lot of patients. After time, you don't want to get numb to it. But I'm just thankful that we can know, like you can look at a blood report and I can too go, do you have really chronic fears? And they're like, yes. How'd you know that? Because your emotions and your physiology and your blood reports are all mixed together. So that's why I love those kind of labs though, because there's more coming out now. I mean, we can go down like a lot of different labs, but I've been finding some that you literally check for brain infections through snot. So, I mean, those are really great. So that was my story, guys. But remember, those numbers, check your kidneys out, check for UTI.
Or it's the world of medical mysteries, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
You end up talking to someone different every day as you get new clients coming in. And I can't tell you the number of people that said, I've been through 10, 20 years, 20, 30 doctors. I keep trying. Here's my symptom list that's 7 miles long. And there's no answers. Yeah. So then when you can take and just look at basic blood work and it can give you hints, and then you can listen to somebody give you symptoms that are along meridians that can then tie back to that basic blood work that you get at every physical, that you get every time you've been to the hospital. You start having the ability to go, okay, maybe it's this. And like you said, You thought that person had a UTI. You sent that information with her.
Yeah.
She was motivated.
Yep.
She found a lab that does 50,000 bacteria instead of 3.
Yep.
So let's just talk through like CBC or CMP, which are your most basic blood labs. What other Chinese medicine hints can you give people that would help them to understand maybe their medical mystery, right? So maybe why they have pain, why they're anxious or depressed, why they feel run down or fatigued. I know in my clinic, if I see albumin elevated, which is a protein, it means that they could be dehydrated.
Ooh.
So when albumin is elevated, which is supposed to be, depending upon the company, below 5, if I see it above 4.6, I'm like, is there some, like, would you consider yourself in a state of stress or fight or flight? Do you feel kind of worked up? And most every time, yeah, I do. I work 70 hours a week. I have 7 kids. I just went through a divorce. Something's going on. I lost a family member. And then you can go on from there. I can go deeper. I can go look at mineral content in their body, and their minerals are depleted because what happened was they're not dehydrated because they're not drinking water. They're dehydrated because they have been stressed for so long that their hormones, their adrenals, start pushing out hormones to get them to be able to handle this stress. So then they started to run at a higher energy level, just like if you rev your engine in your car, it's going to burn more fuel. So they burn through their electrolytes. Now that they burn through their electrolytes, after a long period of time, they're depleted. Well, then you talk about Eastern medicine, and you go, well, they have low chi.
Yeah.
So they have low energy, right? They feel depleted. Eastern medicine, low chi. So what other lab findings do you know of or can you think of?
Man, that was perfect because I'm learning things now. This is what I love when we get together. One of the things, like just to correlate with that, is like on a white blood cell count. I think we've learned in schools, like we'll talk about if you have, and it may have changed since we've been in school, but like if you had neutrophils, white blood cells, you can look into seeing if there's any type of, maybe a chronic bacterial infection like a strep or staph. If you had like a lymphocyte, you could have higher amounts of viral infections. Eosinophils, if you have that, some say it's more parasitic and some say it's viral. But one thing is, one of the things I always check, I do kind of stick with that, but it's correlated. If you really have lymphocytes, this is just an example, one example. If I found lymphocytes were low, okay? If I found really low lymphocytes, I would usually just disregard it because the doctor, I didn't mean to. I didn't know. I was like, why do they have low lymphocytes? And I would think, well, some white blood cell production, maybe in the bone or in the spleen, was off. So in my Chinese medicine mind, I would check for the signs and symptoms of a spleen issue. And so I would go and check the spleen 21. And what that means is, guys, for spleen, you'll usually have signs and symptoms like chapped lips, a ring around the mouth. Some people literally a dry mouth. Those are the big signs of spleen. Chronic shoulder and back around the lats and triceps. Like I can't pick up even my grocery bags because my shoulders hurt so bad. Those are big spleen issues. And if you get the jitters or get hangry, you're tired. I get really hangry. I say, okay, so I would correlate and I ask those patients, do you get hangry? I get that. I'm like, so with the low lymphocyte, one of the biggest things I found was that I would start to check for different things that would go into the lymph system. I would check for mono, Epstein-Barr virus, and strep. And I would normally find that they always had a history of strep or any type of EBV. And they would always say, oh, it's not active. But I did have it, and it's dormant. It's still pulling on you. Now, this was the kicker for me. I still didn't understand why their white blood cell count would be low. And I was always wondered, like, why in the world would it be low? So then I had two patients in a row, and it must be God, they came in. I was just asking this question. And on our testing, our kinesiology testing, I found Leishmania parasite. Leishmania is a protozoa parasite. I was like, all right, well, let's go get it sent off. So I sent them to get a poop test. They went to parasites.org, found they had Leishmania, and I just researched it. We're like, I got to check this out. Leishmania is a parasite that is transmitted by mosquitoes. And the mosquitoes put the eggs into you, and your white blood cells eat them. And it circulates. And then another mosquito comes and bites you and sucks those white blood cells out because they pop open in the mosquito, and the little mature now eggs have popped open in the mosquito, and they revolve the cycle. And I asked those patients that had a low white blood cell count, I said, do you get bit by mosquitoes? And they go, oh, mosquitoes love me. Every year I get bit up. And I said, you're telling me that there's cycles of parasites that get into people, and that's why people say, I'm having blood type and such. I believe it. I'm not saying it's not true. Or I've got, I'm sweet, my blood is sugary. I'm like, no, those mosquitoes smell you, and they know that they have something inside them that needs you to complete their cycle. But it destroys your white blood cells. And I was like, and if you read about Leishmania, all these people had low white blood cell count. And I was like, that's why all the spleen signals showed up on the patient. But I didn't find it until I did low white blood cell count on the blood count. I was like, isn't that crazy?
So right now, listening, grab your CBC with a differential, which means that you have the types of white blood cells.
Yeah.
Look at that. It's going to say neutrophil, and it's going to say lymphocyte.
Yep.
It might say some different names, but look for something in that category. If the lymphocytes are low, then you're talking about you could potentially have a parasite
Potentially.
that is making you get ate up by mosquitoes.
Telling you.
Now, I need to go get my lab work ran because mosquitoes really like me, and I don't like them very much. I'm like, I go outside, I'm wearing pants in the summer because I don't want to get ate up.
Dude, I'm telling you, go to parasites.org just because they'll test for even roundworms and lungworms, not just cysts. But they'll tell you if you have plasmodium or like a malaria or leishmania or something of that sort. And I'm telling you, like, you read some of the actions of protozoa, and a lot of them are through flies, mosquitoes, bed bugs, whatever. And they'll just bite certain people and they don't bite others. It's because they don't have the parasite within them, and you don't. So I know it's a lot to take in to people. I don't want you guys going to get your CBC and being scared, and but it, like, for instance, I always got bit on the inside of the thighs. I don't know what it was. When I was a kid, I always got bit there, and I was like, and I didn't get it tested, back in the day because I did big Lyme cleansing and parasite cleansing, but I would dare to say that I probably had some kind of parasitic infection. And I think it shows, even like, let's say like a low eosinophil or a high eosinophil, they'll usually say like a high eosinophil means that you have more white blood cells to kill the virus off. And I believe that completely. But what happens when they get really low? Usually it means that spleen has been so deteriorated from being infected that it can't produce any more white blood cells. And usually those people have weak bones and they just cannot operate. And that is one of the things, if I ever see a really low eosinophil, I'm automatically saying, you had strep from your parents, right? Did your parents have strep? Oh yeah, mom had strep really bad when I was a kid. And she breastfed you. Yeah. Hits the spleen deteriorates, eosinophils go low. So those are some of my, signs and signals. I know that goes out of our mind. Some of us have our quirks. Each doc has its quirks, and mine is always figuring out, like, why. I mean, I can go story to story. I just worked on a patient, and one of my good friends is a medical doctor, has a building right next to mine. And one of my patients came in. This is another sign and signal. If you ever know anybody that has a raspy voice, nothing against raspy voice. I think they're cool. It's like, yeah, but sometimes when they talk with rasp, it means that the vocal cords have had not damage, but they've been challenged. They've been strained. What you'll find is most of those patients usually have had any type of throat infection, normally. And they've usually had throat infection when they were a kid or ear infections. I guarantee you checked everybody out there, probably 8 out of 10 of them said yes. That means raspy voice means kidney weakness. But it means they have something in their throat and their lymph nodes. Well, I worked on this patient, and she had that, and I just knew from her body she has a little bit of puffiness and stuff. I said, your parents had strep, and she goes, no, I had strep like literally every year for almost 4 years in a row, almost 5 times a year. And I was like, what? And she goes, yeah. I was like, how do you still have tonsils? She goes, well, they just kept them in there, So I do our stuff. We do some body work. I start using my acupuncture. I start doing spleen points. I do cold laser, and I said, I'm going to do this lightly. We're going to stimulate the spleen. This is the kicker. Before, I had told her a previous time, I said, you know what, you may want to just check into seeing if you have any type of bacteria, like a strep, because I don't want to just guess anymore. I like doing lab work. Just let me see. I don't want to guess. And so she said, oh, no, you have no Epstein-Barr, no strep. My good medical doctor friend said that. And so she shares this patient. I do the work, and I said, I know you do. I'm selling, go get it checked. She goes in again, highest EBV and strep. It unlocked. They took a picture of her, man. Her spleen was swollen that day after, this big. And I got the picture, I'll show it tomorrow. And I was like, it was hiding. And then the medical doctor's friend, she goes, kudos. I'm not patting myself on the back. She goes, we would have missed it. And you'd have had strep and stuff in your spleen your whole time. Could you imagine holding that in your body for all your life?
I think this is the perfect example of the fact that, yes, testing works, but you also have to pay attention to the person in front of you.
Yeah.
Right. So I always tell clients when I'm reading labs, I'm not just going to go read your labs, put together a report, never talk to you and be like, this is what's going on. What I want to do is I want to not only have all your paperwork, but I also want to talk with you and get your history. Because like you mentioned earlier, like, this person didn't tell me this, not because they're trying to hide it from you. They were paying you to be there. They wanted to tell you whatever you wanted to know, but they don't think about it. It wasn't on the top of their mind. I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm going to have you fill out all this paperwork, and then I'm going to ask you the same questions again. And every time, we get more information. But I also get an understanding of the person. And as I get that understanding of the person, I'm like, it changes what your labs mean.
Yes.
Because your labs are simply a point in time where this part of you, this tissue, whether it be hair, urine, saliva, blood, came out, and it gave us some possibilities. And it can mean multiple things, because as you mentioned, lymphocytes can mean numerous things. Eosinophils, all types of white blood cells can mean numerous things. But for you saw some signs of something. You challenged the body. Just like if you went and got a different kind of lab testing, like the parasite testing you talked about, you challenge the body, and now you're able to get better information. The body's able to give you better information. No different than when people say, I want to challenge the body to see if you have heavy metals, right? That's pretty well understood. Or we do a glucose tolerance test. It's one of the most common types of challenges out there. They're like, well, let's see if you have a blood sugar problem. I'm going to give you sugar every few hours. This is something endocrinologists or people with diabetes have done to them for years, but you're doing it now instead of just for blood sugar. You're taking it into spleen or infections or what's going on with your white blood cell counts to make an understanding of, is something affecting you long term? That's an infection that could have been there for 20, 30, 40. I mean, how old could somebody be they got it when they were a kid?
You explain it beautifully, and I truly, because like there's times when you have to investigate, and I want everybody to know that. Like I would say it's the journey that we're on with you. Like you're right. Like when you're with the person, I tell people like, I'm not really trying to tell you something or talk at you. We're just trying to investigate with you. We have to find out as much as you do. And hopefully they want to stick it out with us because we're like willing to stick it out with them, And I think that's the beauty of like certain practitioners. We're like, hey, we know it's a journey. It takes a lot of time. It can take money. It can do it. We get that. And I think the inquisitive nature of where we're at, you and I, like, and the docs that are here, you can tell we're all investigators. We all want to know. Like, I love it for the patient, but it's also like for you guys listening out there, it really is for both of us because we try to find out. We don't want to be stuck in the dark. I'll say this, I like challenges, and you do too. I know we all do, but I had challenges of people with cholesterol, and I think they were coming in droves with like cholesterol changes. They were going up above 230 or 250. Some were getting near 300. But I'm not saying this like I found this out, but we deal with parasites. And that's what I love about your parasite. You guys do parasite cleanses. And one of my patients has done Jaban's parasite cleanses. And we talk about the longevity. And I'm saying this all like, I tested some things and I was like, I think you got hidden parasites, and you have hidden parasites, and it's going through this thing. And they're like, okay, well maybe I do, maybe I'm like, no, I think you have hidden parasites. Your cholesterol levels are crazy. And I know you've seen this, but they did a parasite cleanse, and they know they've had parasites long ago, 20 years ago, and they did some of the suggestions that they've seen on your social media. They released a bowl of flukes that was like Skittles, every color of the rainbow. And I was like, are you kidding me? Now that's beautiful. No, everybody's grossed out. But everybody's like, gross, turn it off. I don't want to hear this. But literally they took a picture, and I have the video. I'll probably put it up. And it was like, this is very interesting. But that person's cholesterol finally went down to normal after 20-something years. Those things, and I was reading reports, and it said flukes can stay in a person's body for up to 30 years. They can keep reproducing. 30 years.
Oof. Well, and you start putting together what's going on here. And I love parasites because flukes, liver flukes, liver processes cholesterol.
Yeah.
So like just start connecting the dots, right? So parasites coming out, they probably came out of liver. That's why we had high cholesterol. Did this person ever mention things like irritability, anger, resentment, all of which you've taught me are Eastern medicine emotions that are connected to those organs?
Oh man, it's like one of the best things. Like if I look at people with flukes and they're angry, or internally they're angry. They may not be a person that lashes out, but they hold anger or they feel angry. But it is uncanny. And usually you'll find that people have those think lines. They get really, really deep and ingrained, and you can tell they're not making fun of how they, their eyes are shaped, but they usually will have like a sternness. And in the wood element, they're actually really frustrated, or they've been overwhelmed with life. And one of the biggest things with the anger and frustration of the liver being filled with flukes is that you'll normally look at that person's history, and somehow somebody took something from them. Somebody took a territory away from them, or that somebody took their identity, whether it's in their relationship, whether it's their job, their work. But I would almost have to say 100% of those people would say, oh, I don't know about that. But the people who have the flukes, I'll literally go, no, something happened. And they'll go, yeah, somebody took this part of my life away. And maybe it's not always somebody taking something away, but I'd say most of my patients, I've seen that. And I love it that you start cleaning the flukes out. And some of those patients will be like, hey, man, I don't know, but I feel like I'm not as angry anymore towards those people. So the beauty of it is I can take Western, we can take cleanses, and I can actually help your emotions and give your brain the capacity and the openness to actually find and resolve emotions. And I think we're in a cool world because, man, when you asked me to come do this, I know that I'm very honored. I say that we can look at people's bodies in different ways. Like you could love to do parasites. I could love to do parasites, or I could love to do viruses, or or I like to do a lot of motion work, or I just love it how it can be all congruent. If you really ask a lot of the questions, usually those people will have a congruency with the other doctors. You'll find information on your blood work or from you, or, like, oh yeah, they all are coinciding. And with the Chinese medicine world, like I remember this, and I know it's time's getting short. I'm very cautious. Don't worry, guys. But one of the things, like, I used to sort of not laugh at all, but I'd have patients come in to me and go, hey, doc, you know what's going on? My back hurts, and I just taste salty. And I remember our kinesiology training and stuff in Chinese medicine. I went back, I was like, oh yeah, they used to always talk about taste. And I thought that was just like in Chinese medicine, like whatever, taste, salty. And salty would mean kidneys. So I'd get their test done, and they'd have a kidney infection. This happens. And then they'd come back and they go, doc, same patient, doc, I'm really tasting super sour right now. And I'm like, sour is for the gallbladder and the liver. I'm like, all right. So you start seeing these correlations, and I could go get her cholesterol tested. I'm just saying, like, the small hints and signs in your physical body can be related to your emotions, to your biochemistry, to your lab work. So I don't want anybody out there to ever think like, oh, I'm so random and I'm a mess and I can't be helped. I'm like, no, we can help you. Jaban can help you. Dr. Jaban, he's the man, all right? I don't want to keep boring you guys, but this has been great, buddy. It's been good, man.
Well, I really appreciate all this information. I just want to confirm one thing. You said you ran the kidney test. This is the 50,000 bacteria kidney test.
Yep.
Because not the regular one.
Not the regular one, because Microgen will do this. And you guys, maybe they don't want me saying this, but it's not a big deal. They will take any body fluid. They will give you one called a urokey. So they say make you urinate, and they'll tell you how to do it to get the most out of your urine. They'll do a nasal test. And so what I tell the patient is take the swab and swab it and blow the snot and pick it out of your ears and stick it in there, because they all share tubes. And some of the stuff they pull out is like man, there's some bacteria that I never heard of. I was like, I don't even know what this is. And you read about it, it's like, oh, this bacteria causes severe neurological conditioning and da-da-da. And I'm like, I didn't know that. So even that, and I'll give it to you for the show notes if anybody wants it. But one's called microbiology, and they do Marcons and mucus and biofilm. And I tell patients to get that one because they test for like every type of staph and every type of strep. Like they go at it. And like I've had patients that had severe eczema all over their head and their neck. And I'm like, they had migraines, and I clear everything, and I was like, it's still there. Found out this, they checked for I don't know how many hundreds of tests in the head. And this person had E. coli, like tons of E. coli. And I missed it in her head. So I'm just saying, find a good lab. And these are labs, don't give up. I'm telling you, you can find good stuff if you search for it.
So to close out today, pay attention to small stuff. Get a doc that never stops asking why and looking for solutions, and continue to have hope, because no matter how long you've had something or what you're dealing with, there is hope. There is a solution. Just keep fighting. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks, Bob.